Hey everyone, welcome back to HypnoPro Accelerator. I'm Kimberly Lynne, and my partner Whitney Christina and I are very excited for today's episode. We're diving deep into some fascinating science behind hypnosis, self-hypnosis, and other modalities with a truly amazing guest. And so if you've ever wondered how hypnosis intersects with other kinds of things like EFT, EMDR, psychiatry, this is going to be a real treat for you. So before we dive in though, please, if you love what we're doing here, please like and subscribe. This will help other professional hypnotists find this content and help us keep bringing this stuff and other amazing guests to you. So let's get into it. Welcome to HypnoPro Accelerator, the podcast set to transform your hypnosis business. I'm Kimberly Lynne, and alongside my partner, Whitney Christina, we're your co-pilots in the fast lane to success for professional hypnotists. Join us as we explore the art of building a thriving hypnosis practice. We'll discuss captivating offers, effective client communication, and share our own insights from the profession. No gimmicks, just practical strategies from two experts who understand the world of professional hypnosis inside and out. So grab your coffee or something stronger, we won't judge, and settle in and get ready to accelerate your hypnosis business like never before. It's time to take your practice to new heights. Let's make it happen. Welcome back to HypnoPro Accelerator. Joining us today is Dr. Greg Brown, a board-certified psychiatrist, forensic psychiatrist, and hypnosis expert. As a professor at UNLV School of Medicine, he's trained future psychiatrists, while also running a successful psychiatric practice in which he integrates EMDR, EFT, and hypnosis, among other things. He bridges the gap between science and holistic healing to help clients achieve deep transformation. In hypnosis, he is board certified through the National Guild of Hypnotists and the International Association of Hypnosis Professionals. And today with him, we're going to explore his expertise in hypnosis, self-hypnosis, and how these modalities can enhance personal growth and help professional hypnotists in their businesses. Dr. Brown, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much. It's a delight to be here today.
Awesome. We're so glad to have you. And I know that Whitney has the very first question for you.
Oh, okay.
So, Dr. Brown, you spent a lot of time with your psychiatric degree. You're an MD. And I was really interested to find out what led you to adding to that degree, the EFT and the EMDR and hypnosis. So how did you get led to those modalities?
Oh, well, that's quite a compound question, but I'll do my best.
Yeah.
And feel free to call me Greg. Neither of you are my patients,
Okay.
and you're call
Okay.
me, so that's totally fine. I had actually learned some about hypnosis when I was in high school, and I also had some hypnosis training when I was a resident myself in psychiatry. And so I realized that it had power and it was really important. So I had gone back after starting the psychiatry residency program and taken a pretty extensive course in hypnosis, really for the purpose of teaching residents in my program about trance, how to introduce it, but really found out that, I had the tools and could easily use the element induction and other things, but didn't have a great understanding of really great techniques and steps until learning about 5-path hypnosis later, which is far more organized in the sequence in which you work with people. But to answer your question, I had a practice for a long time. I used sort of traditional models, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and psychodynamic therapy and supportive therapy, which we learn in our training, and really found a lot of people who just didn't move, who didn't make any real changes, who felt very stuck. We could usually keep them out of the hospital, but they weren't really shining, and they didn't really, we didn't have ways of working through their stuck places, is probably the easiest way to put it. So I initially saw some really cool videos on EFT, and I watched the clinician eliminate a phobia in about 10 or 15 minutes with this weird tapping stuff. And I was like, that's real. First of all, it was a primitive VHS, but and not highly edited, but you could see the difference in physiological reaction. So I studied that for a bit. I started integrating that. I added EMDR in, and then I found this website. Actually, I found Cal's book on Amazon because I had a whole bunch of patients around the COVID era who wanted to do hypnosis. Hypnosis, yes, I can. So the things they wanted hypnosis for were not things that I had learned very much about. So I found a book on scripts, and this book was so amazing that I immediately went to Cal's website. I immediately said, I have to do this training. I have to do all this. This is it. And so it was at that point that I integrated hypnosis. So now in my practice, I usually do seventh path self-hypnosis with patients. And I also typically involve them in EFT or something similar. So they have a practice they can go home and do that will clear out junk that they know about in the form of EFT. And then they have seventh path self-hypnosis, which clears out all the junk they don't know about because it's
very cool
in their subconscious and unconscious. And the transformation and changes and healing and growth that I've seen in every patient who has chosen to do those practices is just really astounding.
I love that. And you kind of answered my next question, which is like, how do you integrate specifically hypnosis in your practice? Are you, in addition to doing or teaching self-hypnosis to your clients, your patients, are you also using hypnosis with them? And if so, how often?
Well, I think the what I would use, I guess, is what we would call seventh path forward. So we do hypnosis every session until they get all the 9 steps.
Got you.
And what I try to do is have slightly longer sessions so that we can do the next step of seventh path and then do any kind of age regression work that we need to do if people are getting stuck. If they're going to get stuck, they get stuck at the second recognition. People who know what that is. And so that session is probably going to be an age regression when they come back next time because it just was not as pleasant as they had hoped. And then we do that and then they're good. And then we just go through the rest. But I try to leave time at the beginning and at the end in order to discuss what's going on in life, to introduce other modalities when there's time, and to just sort of integrate it together so they have a whole package by the time they finish the 9th recognition.
Yeah, that's really great. And so for anybody watching that isn't familiar with a lot of the acronyms that we're using, we are all hypnotists who have been trained and certified in a method called 5-Path. And in that modality or that school of hypnosis, there is also a specific kind of self-hypnosis called seventh path self-hypnosis. And that is a whole program in and of itself. And so if you're interested in that and you want more information, we're going to have links in the description of the video. So we're going to probably still use more of those acronyms, but hopefully that helps you.
Sorry for the alphabet soup, but
no,
there's
that's
no
okay.
talking about
That's
it without
okay.
it.
Yep. No, and you can't.
I would just say one little thing about seventh path self-hypnosis,
Yes.
and that is, it is unlike other forms of self-hypnosis that you may have heard of in readings or webinars or whatever when you've learned it. In that, it is not a direct suggestion-based self-hypnosis. You're not just like saying, I'm forever a non-smoker over and over. It actually is an evocative form of self-hypnosis, which allows for the gaining of insight. And I would say equally importantly, it allows for things to arise from your subconscious or unconscious and to clear out those negative emotions that are associated with that stuff, whatever it is, in about as effortless a way as one could easily imagine. And so that's what really makes it such an incredible tool, because a lot of patients come in and they're sick of talking about whatever the problem is. They're sick of, and because they talk about it and they still feel awful. But when things come up in the context of being deeply, deeply relaxed in self-hypnosis, then it starts to change the emotional tone of those events, those memories, so they're no longer miserable anymore. And that really makes it an incredibly powerful tool.
Yeah, I love that. And so I want to jump to, since you brought us to that, I'm going to jump to we have a few questions about that. And so to lead into that and transition to that, I totally agree with you. It is not traditional. I'm going to emphasize that it is not just suggestion based. It actually gets to the root cause all on its own, which makes it incredibly effective for self-directed healing. And that's why I also teach it and require my clients to all use it. And I've had very few not like it because it's a tool that they get to use and it's really great. And so you are doing some research on that. And so
I also, just wanted to say, I also require my clients to do the 7th path self-hypnosis. I love the way that Greg put that information. You can't just go on Amazon and get any self-hypnosis and get the same results that is achieved with the 7th path self-hypnosis. So it really is something dynamically different. And for me, it has been what has made the changes stay permanent for people, because it gets to the root of the cause without having to relive the trauma and the drama and find every tomato seed in the pile of poo.
Yeah,
so to speak.
Very true.
Nicely put, Whitney.
It is. And so I have to respond one more time too. And I like to tell people that, like, if they read a book or get a pre-recorded hypnosis track, that's like a snapshot. It might not cover everything, but it's very static. And so once you've used it for any period of time, if it has helped you, that's all there is. It can't keep really moving you forward, where 7th path is dynamic, evergreen, and always helpful. So you can tell that the three of us really like it. So if you're interested, you should find out more. But now we want to know about the research that you're doing. So if you don't have to go really, really deep, but we would love to know kind of what the overview of it is, what you're hoping to learn, and what maybe some early results are showing.
Maybe a tad early for that, but
I know.
I would just make one remark based upon your last ones. And that is, I wish I could require all of my patients to do 7th path self-hypnosis. But as a psychiatrist, I have some patients who come in who were working on something or who may need or require medications and whatnot, and they have no interest, and I still have to treat them without it. But I can just say they do way better with it if they will listen to me. But anyway,
love that.
That's another topic altogether. So there are several different sort of angles of looking at the overall research. And so because I had really wonderful effects myself from using 7th path self-hypnosis, and because my patients have had such amazing results, I decided that it would be a really useful thing to start doing some research into this process. So I've involved the medical school, residents and medical students, and the director of research at our institution, and we're going through the steps. So because we're going through all the steps and we have all these learners involved, it is going a tad slower than I had dreamed it might go when I first had the idea. But we have finished doing what is called, let me see, it's basically a journal article which describes the process of what we're going to do. And so that is out there right now. It should be published almost any day. And we're in the midst of doing a full meta-analysis of hypnosis and self-hypnosis in looking at anxiety, depression, and burnout. So we found, initially using search criteria, about 500 articles that address these particular questions. And in the culling process, which is part of a meta-analysis, we have got this down to about 150-ish articles. And so now the team is reading all of them. We'll be doing both a systematic review of those and also a meta-analysis. A meta-analysis is a statistical review of individual studies. So what I think probably hypnotherapists don't really appreciate is the total amount of research that actually exists in hypnosis. And if you think, our field, well, I mean, I guess it began with Mesmer 200 or 300 years ago, but if we really think about case reports and case studies, they really started flourishing at the time of Bernheim, which would have been right at the end of the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century. And his suggestive therapeutics is still available in reprint version in English if you care to read it. But that one book has hundreds of case studies in it of
Wow.
he's hypnotized and what he did with them. And really he was in a feud with Charcot at the time because Charcot thought that only hysterical women could be hypnotized, and
Yeah.
Bernheim believed everybody could be hypnotized. And he demonstrated his point by basically just hypnotizing 10,000 people. So,
Wow.
we have this historical tradition in which hypnosis is really the basis of psychiatry. It's the basis of psychotherapy, really. And everything either came as a rejection of it in the form of Freud moving into psychoanalysis, or an adoption of it, which was the hypnotic tradition itself. And so it really has a rich clinical base that goes back for over a century. And we see actual data from hypnosis studies going back almost a century because it was very well studied for war trauma in World War I, World War II. Getting soldiers back to the field, of course, was the goal in that particular context. And there have been more shady aspects of research with the CIA and whatnot in the 70s as well. In short, we have a really long scientific tradition of hypnosis being demonstrated as effective beyond the AMA statement in the 1950s, saying it's effective. We also have scientific data showing that. So that's the level that we're at right now. We hope to be finishing this systematic review and meta-analysis by June, hopefully presenting the results of that potentially at our fall workshop. And then we would like to and are planning to enroll medical students, nursing students, other students in the healthcare professions in a randomized study where half are presented with seventh path self-hypnosis and the other half will have, we haven't decided if it's just a control group or if it'll be an alternative model, but looking at reduction of and elimination of burnout throughout medical training or nursing training or healthcare training, because that's turning out to be a major problem, is the burnout rates we're seeing, not just in people who are in the profession, but in school itself. So that'll give us about 4 years of follow-up surveys with these groups to demonstrate how those groups separate out on burnout measures at year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and hopefully get a really fantastic database to really demonstrate this particular form of hypnosis is useful.
Love it.
That's amazing.
In progress.
Yeah, I love that.
I like that you're having more research done in hypnosis. Kimberly and I recently did a podcast where we were talking about there is more and more research coming out on hypnosis and how effective it is for people. But I really like that you just put it so succinctly and that there is really a lot out there.
I know Dr. What's his name? Corey Hammond. I think Hammond is his last name. He's at the University of Utah. Has done quite a lot of work in publicizing research on hypnosis as well. And so he's really laid some groundwork in that area.
That's great. We'll have to check him out. Being in like a medical doctorate in the medical professional industry, what kinds of misconceptions, or what do you see the biggest misconception is about hypnosis? Or is there any more?
Well, I don't interact with a lot of physicians of other specialties.
Okay.
Now, several physicians do refer people to me for smoking cessation
Okay.
with good effect. And so those people certainly have a positive notion about hypnosis. I think in general, if you were to just walk into a general room of doctors, they really wouldn't know anything about hypnosis beyond what the general public would know. And what the general public really thinks about is stage hypnosis and, concerns about, clicking like a chicken and things of that nature.
Right. Right. So what would you tell those doctors, that room full of doctors, about hypnotists and working with hypnosis and partnering together?
Well, I would first make reference to the scientific literature about hypnosis to say that this isn't stage hypnosis, and it's a therapeutic form of hypnosis, which is fully participatory, and it is something that the person does with the clinician, not something done to the person, and that there's great literature to suggest effectiveness in anxiety, pain control, insomnia, depression to some degree, and for that matter, smoking cessation and other habit cessation. And that literature is good literature, but it just, is not often in medical journals.
Mhm. Mhm. Thank you. And then I have another question. You did a talk a couple of symposiums ago, and you were talking about EMDR and hypnosis, and you did a comparison of the two and when was one more effective than the other and stuff like that. And I have been seeing in my area that EMDR is really trending for people that want to get rid of trauma. But also trending is I've noticed people aren't really getting the relief that they're looking for, or that it comes back. So what have you found, or what do you think about the difference between EMDR and hypnosis?
Well, EMDR is a very, what would I say, protocol-driven treatment regimen, so that you follow a script very closely. You then do bilateral stimulation of one kind or another. It's either an eye movement back and forth like this, or there are paddles, for example, people can hold and vibrate alternating hands. And then they just basically allow to come to mind whatever comes to mind. And you do this a series of times. And the notion is that by activating right brain and left brain in sequence, while initially holding a particular memory in play, that it unlocks the trapped emotion that's attached, or the trapped memory that's attached to a negative emotion. And it starts to begin processing like a regular memory, and then eventually just gets processed as a regular memory. When I have used it with people, it seems to be permanent. In other words, people don't come back and talk about it. But if you miss an aspect or a part of the memory, then that part can reignite the initial memory, certainly.
Okay.
I think if you look at EFT, which is the tapping, you look at EMDR, which is bilateral processing, and then you look at hypnosis specifically with age regression to cause, I think what you're doing in all of those is activating this biological mechanism. It's a mechanism that's present in everything from mollusks to human beings. It's not unique to us, but it's just part of biology, of the biology of memory. And that is, when you activate a memory trace, it will be activated with a particular emotional tone. When it's active, it's changeable. So when we use EMDR, we're looking at really creating a whole series of free associations in the context of that bilateral stimulation, which will often switch memory tone. And so people will start, like if they have a sad memory, then after the bilateral stimulations, they'll remember a really good memory with that person, or they'll remember something positive. And so that gets mixed into the negative until at the end of it, it's all pretty much positive. With EFT tapping, you get a very strong relaxation response by tapping those particular points on the body. So if it was an activating memory, now you're manually, so to speak, creating a relaxation response attached to the memory. And in hypnosis, when you're going back to cause for a fearful memory, you're giving the little one all of the knowledge, information, and skills that they need in order to get through that experience without being traumatized, with the emotional calmness, A, of being in the hypnotic state, and B, being an adult looking back upon it. And that change of understanding in the little one then alters the physiological response of the actual memory. So in all three interventions, you're really changing the emotional tone. And then when that memory drops back into long-term memory once again, the new emotional tone is either one of neutral or even slightly positive or relaxed. And at that point, the memory can no longer act in a way to be traumatic anymore.
That's a great explanation.
It's a memory like I had, eggs for breakfast this morning. Presumably that's not emotional unless they were really bad eggs. So, and you have about a 4-hour window after doing the work, whether it's hypnosis or anything else, for that memory to reconsolidate in long-term memory, at which point it's generally a permanent change unless something new happens.
Wow. Thank you.
So really, I hear you saying they're very similar. They're probably activating similar areas in the brain and causing similar changes in neurochemicals and things like that. So we don't have to go really specific. So my next question is that hypnosis is often really used. I think a lot of people that use guided meditation could also benefit from hypnosis, and they tend to think of them as similar or interchangeable. And I was wondering what you do know, if you've read maybe in all those systematic readings, like what does research say about the differences or similarities with hypnosis and guided meditations?
Well, I think the issue with one of the key things that we know is in order to get a relatively vivid reactivation of that memory and then the acting upon it, is that we really need to be at a particular level of trance in order to do that. And the problem with guided meditation is, although it can be fine and great and fun, you never know how deep the person is. And if they're not deep enough, either their memory is not going to be clear enough for them to really work with effectively. And secondly, if it isn't deep enough and the memory's upsetting enough, they're just going to become upset, and then it will reinforce the negative emotion. I would also point out that of all of these methods, the one really unique and amazing thing about hypnosis is that we tend to regress someone to the first instance of that emotion occurring. So if you're doing EMDR, okay, you're doing EMDR on the automobile accident you had last week. And yeah, you won't have any more fear about driving your car. So that's great. That may be what you came in for. If you're doing EFT, likewise, you have to identify those events that were causing you whatever emotion. The sort of magic and the extra juice in hypnosis is that you say, in an age regression, go back to the first time you felt this feeling. And so you may have come in because you feel anxious over an automobile accident last week, but that's not the first time you ever felt anxious. You probably felt anxious, lying in a crib or something somewhere, or maybe before. But hypnosis allows you to go back and reduce that negative emotional tone of anxiety through all of the experiences of anxiety you've had in your whole life, not just the accident you had last week. So it has the potential to do really a lot of very efficient clearing of negative emotions, whereas the others really do require a conscious recall of an event. And hypnosis does not require that walking in the door.
Right. So you're just doing a whole bunch. I often say that I get to be a backhoe, taking like huge chunks of garbage out of people's souls, minds, hearts, whatever. And what I like to put it into like word pictures, but like with EMDR, EFT, these are all singular events a lot of times, singular things, where with hypnosis and the way we're trained with 5-path, we get to do like huge bucketfuls of events, but subconsciously. and they're very rarely all consciously recalled. And so
Correct.
it's more comfortable. It's a much bigger effect. This is more efficient than doing one individual thing at a time.
Yes, that I think there is definite truth to that.
Yeah. Fantastic. Whitney, do you have another one? I think we have one more before we get to the fun questions.
Ooh, the fun questions.
Well, we had a question about the different kinds of self-hypnosis and seventh path self-hypnosis, but Greg answered that like right up in the beginning. He talked all about it, and I just really loved what he said. I just think that knowing that the seventh path self-hypnosis is more dynamic and less static, and like you guys said, a chunk of time than with the self-hypnosis. I mean, there's some really good people reading self-hypnosis on Amazon, but you know, the seventh path self-hypnosis works dynamically. So I just love that. But do you have any more words of wisdom about that?
I would just say, one of the reasons I try to give people a practice like EFT and seventh path is people will sometimes come in and they will talk about seventh path. And even though obviously the instructions are to just say the recognition, wait for the echo, they will come in and say, I really wanted to work on situation X when I started my seventh path. And it's like, yeah, but that's not the way seventh path works. You have to allow things to arise from your subconscious and your unconscious and see what comes up and see the wisdom that's coming up from your subconscious and your unconscious mind. And so this like dual modality of having the seventh path is just an automatic practice, an automatic cleanser, an automatic fixer, so to speak, combined with something like EFT where they can say, I had this problem yesterday. Okay, do EFT on that because you absolutely know what it is. So just do that. And then just wait and see what comes up in seventh path. It sort of gives them one tool set for the things they consciously know they need to work on. And it allows the seventh path to do what it's going to do anyway without trying to consciously interfere with the content of it. So that's why I really love the combo. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
That is,
sure.
I love it too. I think people, my example is that, we have anecdotal stories of people clearing phobias with seventh path self-hypnosis. They never consciously worked on it. And I often tell my clients with seventh path that there is so much going on subconsciously. You just don't even know. It's literally like a duck, little legs below the surface where you can't see. There's so much going on that you can't, sometimes it feels hard to quantify for people. Like, why am I doing this? Because they can't consciously quantify the changes because they haven't come up against the phobia, right? If your phobia is sharks, but you never go in the ocean, you haven't, because you think you're afraid of sharks, you'll never know that you cleared that because you're not challenging it. So because it's so subconscious many times, we just don't know. So I like that.
I have to tell one little tiny quick story in response to that. When I was training in five path and seventh path in Dallas, with Whitney, in fact, one of our now mutual friends was sitting next to me in the room, and she had not smelled or tasted anything for, I think, a little bit over a year, maybe even 2 years because of COVID. So she went back to wherever, I guess you were at a hotel or something. But anyway, she went and started practicing seventh path self-hypnosis. And on about day 3 of our conference, she walked into the room and turned to me and she says, I smell coconut. Well, that was the lotion I had used, had some coconut oil in it. And then she grabbed a Danish and she said, that's raspberry. No intention, but it really demonstrates how we have these levels. You have our conscious mind, the subconscious mind, and the unconscious mind. And practices like this really do get them in alignment with one another. And she had this spontaneous, complete clearing of her lack of taste and lack of smell after 3 days of seventh bath. Now, I can't say everyone has that, but I can say that was incredibly dramatic to see those physiological changes at the level of the unconscious so that she could begin experiencing smell and taste again. It was really, really moving to see that.
Yeah. And I want to talk about, I've had multiple situations. I'm sure you guys have had this in your practice too. You reminded me of it when you said they want to get rid of their car accident trauma so they can drive a car. Well, I had a woman come in, and she wanted to be able to drive a car again. And so we were doing the 5-path and 7-path hypnosis with her. And all of these other things started coming up and clearing up. And so she got rid of her phobia of driving in cars, and she, that was absolutely amazing to her. But she also cleared up some things in her career that she had some bad, just things just keep falling into place the way they should be. She ended up being the CFO of this company that she had been having this battle against. She'd been training people to be the CFO, and then they would leave, and then she would train them again. And she finally was like, no, my integrity for me. And she became the CFO, and people's lives just changed dramatically because they get the inner wisdom and they get the boundaries. And what you were talking about, it clears and it puts substance to the way and structure that your life, like you want to live it, should be. And I have had client after client after client. They come in for a GI issue, and the next thing you know, his social anxiety is gone, and he's like, I think people like me, and he's off traveling the world. It's amazing the things that they do.
I agree. Yes.
I agree. All right. So I have one last question, and then we get to our fun game. So this is a question I got to ask when we were doing interviews at the symposium. I love this question, and I never got to interview you. So how do you see the medical and scientific fields becoming and adjusting? We're hoping moving more towards acceptance of hypnosis. Is that something that we can look forward to? And as professional hypnotists ourselves and not a doctor like yourself, what can we do to prepare and maybe help that move forward?
That's a very good question. And I don't have an absolute answer to that. But I can say I was just recently at the American College of Psychiatrists, which is, it's like the invitation only, like special organization, that kind of thing. And so I presented a poster there on some research that I did in energy psychology, 2 models, EFT and AIT, which are just 2 different versions of energy psychology. First of all, they accepted the poster, which, I think probably 20 years ago they wouldn't have. And the conversations I had with people who came up and looked at the poster session, were like, is this really here? Because people in their lives are talking about things like this, alternative strategies, ways of dealing with things. And he shared with me that when he was one of them shared with me, when he was in training, he had started a group for people who had phobias, as an example. And like 5 years later, everyone was coming to the group, but they all still had their phobias. And I said, well, using these techniques, a phobia is gone in about 20 minutes. It's not a multi-year task. And he was like, that's amazing. So I think that, and there's also an entire field called integrative psychiatry, which is a more holistic version of psychiatry that includes diet and psychological, all of this. So I think we're seeing little inklings on the edge of the field that are breaking away from what had been moving to a really biological reductionistic model, which I had disagreed with from the start, but models have to play out. People are seeing that, medication has not eradicated mental illness. So I think there are people who are beginning to open their minds. And I think the more that, if we're going to enter the medical fields and we're going to enter the scientific fields, the more we can make reference to really hard science like memory reconsolidation theory and meta-analysis level studies of hypnosis and other things, people will listen more effectively than talking about other kinds of information. So sort of a two-pronged answer. There are going to be some people who are so mired in biological reductionism that we can't get them out. But I think there's some opening in the field right now that I wasn't seeing a few years ago.
Great. And just kind of based on what you're saying, I do think that EFT has had a beautiful surge, EMDR, a beautiful surge. I think, why not hypnosis next? We're just going to manifest that now.
I agree.
So
100%.
All be like, not the witch doctors anymore. So I love that. Okay. So now it's time for our fun little game called This or That. Now, the rules are you just go with your gut. No overthinking it. Just the first thing that pops in your brain, right?
All right.
You know how
Kimberly.
this works, right? Okay. All right. Early bird or night owl?
Night owl.
Work in silence or background music?
Silence.
Okay. Talk to animals or speak every language?
Talk to animals.
I don't know. It might have taken a little too long. All right. Time travel to the past or the future?
Future.
Ooh, I like it. And would you rather have to always rhyme or when you speak have to sing everything instead of talking?
Rhyme.
All right. There you go. Every answer was right. Good job. So, how can people connect with you if they want to find you?
The easiest thing is just to go to my website. It's just www.gregorypbrownmd.com. And then there's a contact me page there. Click it and you can send me an email. I usually respond to email within the day. And that's the easiest way to get me.
All right. And that's all we have for you, everybody. That's today's episode. I hope it sparked something in all of our listeners. I hope you found it helpful and you learned something. Please follow us. Stay connected with us. You can find us at HypnoProAccelerator.com. We have a free Facebook group and we have monthly trainings called Power Hour where you can work on your business. And that's what we have for you. So thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us, Greg.
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
It was fun. Bye.
Bye.